So, first commandment, your commandments, and that is the law. The ultimate purpose of the law is to encourage people to live together peacefully. There are 5 needs our government needs to protect to achieve this. Order, safety, property, individual freedoms, and the common good. Order, for examples, are traffic laws, setting standards, meaning like, are we going to use the metric system? Are we going to use feet? Are we going to use gallons? What's our currency? So setting some of those like mathematical and measurement standards to make sure we're all using the same system. Settle conflicts. The law makes sure that if someone says like, hey, they crashed into my car and destroyed it, and the other person says, no, I didn't. Well, the law is in place to allow those people a chance to figure out what really happened and who should pay, that kind of thing. So settling conflicts between people. And also making sure that there's a consistent set of rules, that everyone knows what they are, and that those rules are enforced equally. Now, I understand that maybe that doesn't always happen, but again, these are goals. Our government, in order to achieve peace and harmony among people, it has to strive to achieve these elements of order. Goes right into safety, crime, protection of the old and young, property, both physical and intellectual. For example, like the Nike logo isn't something you can get a picture of it and touch it, but you can't. It's really an idea. It's something that someone created in their head. Well, that's protected. Meaning you can't use the Nike logo unless you've asked permission. If it's not for educational purposes, that property is protected or should be protected. Individual freedoms, Bill of Rights, all that stuff we've talked about. The government needs to protect those. And the government also needs to try to encourage people acting in the common good. So protecting our environment, helping us with our health insurance, all that kind of stuff. Unemployment aid. If there's a big disaster, what money's in the government to help people, recover after that disaster. So those are the things those are needs our government needs to protect to achieve harmony and peacefully people living together without killing each other.
Now, just to give you a few examples of some of the freedoms and property and order that is maintained by the government, let's talk about the economy. What is the economy? It's a system for producing and distributing goods and services. Not distributing like as in just handing out, although it could include that, but just who is going to get what? How is that going to be determined? Is the government going to determine it? Is it just going to be left up to the people and private businesses to decide? A mix of both? That's what an economy is. And just so you know what I mean by say goods, we're not talking goods in like good versus evil. Goods are physical products, such as food and clothing. It does not include services. Though economy does include services. An economy includes goods and services. Goods are the physical products. Services are things that you do for people, like waitresses and gardeners. A waitress or a gardener doesn't actually make a physical thing, but they might do something for you, like bring you your food, even though they're not making it, or take care of your lawn, even though they're not the ones who actually planted the lawn. We talked about protecting individual freedoms. There's many, many of these. We've touched on some of them. We're going to talk about a lot more of those as we go through the class. But let's talk a little bit about your 5 economic freedoms. You have the freedom to buy and sell. In a free enterprise system, in a capitalist economy, you have freedom to buy and sell what you want when you want. And other types of governments where the government has a lot more power, you may not have this freedom. Freedom to compete. That means you can try to compete against other businesses. Now, you might fail, and that's on you, but you have the freedom to choose if you want to compete, how you want to compete. Freedom to make a profit, meaning if you're doing really, really well and you're making a lot of extra money, you keep it. The government doesn't take it from you to distribute how it wants. Now, freedom to own property. That doesn't mean you're guaranteed to get property. It just means that you can own it. The government can't say, no, nobody owns property. It all belongs to the government and we'll rent it to you. That might happen, but the government can't force it. If you can come up with the money or the resources to get property, you can buy it. And the government can't really stop your way in most cases. Finally, freedom to choose an occupation. You have the freedom to choose what job you want and how you want to get there.
So laws and morals. Now, laws attempt to reflect our morals. They try to mirror our morals, and they are enforced by the government. But our morals are our beliefs in what is right or wrong or fair. They're not enforced by the government. So like you might, like if you have a religious belief, a government's probably not going to do anything other than give you the freedom to have the belief. Won't really punish anybody if someone breaks a moral. They'll only punish people if they break a law, but our laws are guided by our morals. Like Christian belief and belief of many religions, most of them is thou shalt not kill. So we have laws that reflect that moral that we shouldn't kill, and you go to jail for a long time or even get executed if you kill someone. So laws reflect our morals, what we believe is right or wrong or fair, but not every moral has a law. So what happens if a law goes against our beliefs? Because if laws are against our morals, but we all have different morals, well then how do we know what moral our laws should reflect? And that's a collision point that's come up often in our history. And for example, in the South, Southern America, south of the United States of America, at one point there was a rule saying that if you went into a restaurant that wasn't a black people only restaurant, blacks could not sit at the front counter. Like if it was a diner, you had to go sit in the back. There was a seat for white people, and then there was a seat for anybody else. Whites could also sit in the black area too. They usually chose not to, but they could. But then there was the area for whites only. And if and this wasn't just because the owner didn't like them. He may not have, but this was the law. So that if a black person sat at the counter of a diner that was white people only, the owner didn't have to say anything. He could just call the police, and the police would arrest that person, and that person would go to jail. Because it was the law, not just a racist business owner. That was the law in all restaurants. So Martin Luther King, as you can see on screen, he had this belief that one has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. Now, before you get too excited and thinking like, yeah, that law is not fair, I'm not going to follow it. If you disobey a law because it goes against your morals, civil disobedience means you accept the consequences. So he got students to go and black students to sit in that counter and refuse to get up. And they were arrested and they went to jail. Well, that's not fair. The laws are unfair. Well, that's the thing about a law. If it's going to be a law, it has to be enforced. If you enforce one law and not the other, then people will just ignore all the laws. So the point of civil disobedience is that you're trying to go against a law, but you're going to accept the consequences and hope that if enough of you do it and enough people see what's going on, maybe that law will be changed. But if you disobey a law, understand you will get punished. And you accept that because it's worth it, because your morals are that important to you. For example, in 1967, Muhammad Ali received a draft notice that he had to go fight in the Vietnam War. He was heavyweight champion of boxing of the United States. He was the heavyweight champion, one of the greatest fighters that ever lived. And he refused to go because it was against his beliefs. He didn't want to go fight in a war he didn't believe in, went against his beliefs, and he was fined, went to jail, and had his title stripped of him. He's the only heavyweight champion in American history that lost his title not because he got beat by another boxer, but because the government took it away as punishment for breaking the law. And he broke the law, and he punished it. And he was not allowed to box for years. It was years before they finally realized what they did to him was wrong and let him box again. But he paid the consequence. So understand, this isn't like, oh, Martin Luther King said, I don't have to follow the law. That's not fair. You don't have to follow the law, but that means you accept the consequences. So decide, is this really going against your morals? And if it is, then it's worth taking the consequences.